to Smart Life. I am Dr. Gina, always happy to be on the air with you. Now, the topic of spanking back in the news. If everyone around here could behave. The NFL star Adrian Peterson has been indicted on child abuse charges for spanking his child, they say, and whether or not he went over the line when he was disciplining his little boy. So-called experts on both sides of this issue have come out with their opinions on the effectiveness of spanking. So we go now to the man who wrote the book on parenting. He's the author of Desperately Seeking Parents, Dr. Dathan Paterno. Welcome back to Smart Life. No one is advocating, right, like spanking to the point of abuse where a child has to go to the emergency room. Out of the question, that's not what we're doing here. But I really take offense, honestly, to the news media's use of this being a spanking story at all, because spanking doesn't result in emergency room visits.
Right, it's not. It's when people conflate the two.
That's beating.
Spanking is not beating, and beating is not spanking.
Yeah, and I think that's important to distinguish because, you know, they can call it spanking all day long, but that's not the definition biblically, or certainly not in terms of the articles you've written on discipline. Many of your colleagues have written articles on the efficacy of spanking, and to lump that all together is really more than irreverent. It's irresponsible, don't you think?
Oh, I agree. I think you on either end of the spectrum, you have the anti-spanking enthusiasts who call everything that's painful abuse and beating. Mm-hmm. And then you have people who are the spanking fetishists who think that everybody should spank their child at all times for all things. Mm-hmm. And that's a little creepy too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's abusive. I think a moderate view of it is that the Bible teaches it, and there is nothing quicker and more effective to establish a reasonable dominance with your child. I think you can use other methods, but there's nothing safer and there's nothing more loving and more firm and more effective than spanking when done properly.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting you say that. I've always rescued pit bulls. It's a big passion of mine. I love pit bulls. And one of the first things you learn when you're training pit bulls is when they, in any way, they hold their tail high to you, or they give you any of those animal signs that they think they're dominant over you. And I even tell my kids, because I have a little Frenchie now, and I tell my kids, if he growls at you, you immediately roll him over on his back and bite him on the nose, because that's the symbol of discipline and dominance in the wolf culture, right? So that same. You know, it's funny how the lefties, they want to say, oh, well, they believe in all things survival of the fittest and all things evolution, until it comes down to disciplining their own young, which is even done in the animal kingdom. Certainly the monkeys do it, that they think we're all related to, certainly the wolves. Why is it that there's this breakdown amongst the left out there, thinking that spanking might sometimes be an effective form of discipline?
Yeah, I think it's a misunderstanding of equal rights. You know, that's one of their mantras and their memes is equal rights for everybody. But equal rights does not mean equal in terms of authority and equal position. I think God created us with different positions and different amounts of authority. And our culture is screwed up because parents err on one side. Either they are too harsh and too firm and they go too far, which Adrian Peterson most certainly did, or they make the other error and say that the child should have equal rights to the parents. Well, equal rights is a little bit different here. They have the right to live there and they have the right to be loved, but they also need to be disciplined, and they absolutely need a leader who will establish a reasonable dominance with them. And children need to have reasonable submissiveness with their parents. And again, nothing will establish that quicker and more firmly and permanently than spanking.
But you can overuse spanking, and certainly there are other forms of discipline that kids don't do well with. Lots of experts weighing in on this. I've got a plethora of articles that my producer pulled on this topic. But some cases they say that, you know, an occasional spank used appropriately can lead to a child being much better adjusted than, for example, the parent who yells, which is my tendency. I don't like, I don't like physical discipline. As a woman, I don't like that at all. Certainly not me as a mother, as a mother of boys. I don't like that. So I will tend to default to just yelling about it. But in fact, the experts say that's pretty destructive.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point of spanking is it's an aversive stimulus. Okay. Now, yelling includes an emotion and a relational piece that shows the parent who's out of control. And if there's anything that's going to be damaging to a child, it's the child seeing that the parent is out of control and is really feeling unloving towards the child. You can spank and not be rageful and not be out of control. And so it's, for people who talk about spanking being so damaging, it's not the actual, smack on the butt that's harmful potentially. It's the rage and the hatefulness and all of that intense emotion and lack of control. That's what's damaging to a child. So whether it's yelling or punishing or running away or spanking, if you do it out of control, it's going to be damaging for the child.
Quick rundown, Dr. Paterno, in your book, Desperately Seeking Parents. By the way, you have another book, too, called Ladies and Gentlemen, that, of course, you are my co-author on, that talks about the need for honor to be restored back into our culture. But in your book, Desperately Seeking Parents, I want you to tell me, give us a quick rundown on the most effective discipline in the most effective situations, if you will.
Well, I say that you use spanking so that you don't have to use spanking anymore. I've spanked each of my kids twice, actually my son 3 times. Once I established that I was in charge and that they needed to listen to me, there was just enough fear that other means of discipline would work. And so I quickly transitioned to using timeout. Now, a lot of people don't like the term timeout, but it's really a separation where you're not reinforcing the child with your attention, which is a really primary motivator for particularly younger children. So I used timeout liberally for my children. Once they become 8 or 9 or so, then you use reinforcements like the iPad and watching TV and having friends over and dessert, rewards, and you withhold those until the child's behaving better. But for younger kids, timeout is really highly effective. But if you don't use some kind of punishment in order to get them to go to timeout perfectly, you're going to have a world of problem.
And so for those who want to research this and kind of rethink maybe, because parenting, this is, you and I have talked about this many times, it's not a science, it is an art. It is something that you have to tailor to each child. As a mother of 5 different children, I can absolutely assure you we don't parent them each alike. In some cases, there is a radical departure from how we would parent one child to another. But what's your most sound advice as where to start as parents if you've decided that maybe the yelling's not working, maybe the overuse of timeout that your child doesn't really care about isn't working well? Aside from getting your book, Desperately Seeking Parents, which was my first piece of advice to them, what can they do?
Well, I love the love languages. Gary Chapman's series on that is really powerful. And if you understand your child's love language, you're going to understand what's reinforcing to the child. And so you can use what's reinforcing to the child to motivate them. And for some kids, it's going to be timeout. For some kids, it's going to be removing reinforcements. For some kids, it's going to be using a time and attention and gifts and all of those things. That can be really powerful for children. And you're absolutely right. Every child is different.
We're out of time. Dathan, thank you so much for being with us.